Welcome to Marvelous Disney, the podcast that discusses the most recent doing at one of the more dynamic divisions of the Walt Disney Company, which is, of course, Marvel Entertainment. My co-hosts, the amazing Aaron Adams and I, are recording this show on Monday, February 3rd, 2020, which is the day after the Super Bowl. You caught it, right, Aaron?
Oh, absolutely. I had to watch all the commercials and whatnot.
Well, yeah, I have to admit, not much of a sports fan, but I'm always fascinated by the Super Bowl because of just the craft of the thing. It's live television, and it's so ridiculously well shot. In fact, they had 70 cameras on the field. I guess there were a bunch of them manned, a bunch of them were robotic, but that's why you seem to be coming at this game from every angle.
Can you imagine the studio control room? If you've got 70 cameras, that means you've got 70 monitors to pick from in the control room so you can put it on one screen.
Who is capable of calling the shots in a situation like that? I mean, that just has to be a crazy setup. But again, you're right. A lot of the other reason we all watch the Super Bowl is the commercials. And of course, for Marvel fans, we had two that were of interest. One, of course, was for the Black Widow, first film of Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, arriving at theaters May 1st. And then there was our very first look at those limited series that Marvel Studios is producing for Disney+. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and Loki. And you brought up something I have just not heard before about. And again, the Loki clip is what, 5 seconds, if that?
Yeah, I mean, he gets to say a single line, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
But somebody online noticed a thing, and I went, hey, wait a minute. And then I read the article and went, holy cow, they did a thing that I didn't expect. And it rather confirms a whole bunch of hypotheses that are floating around, shall we say. On Loki's chest, he's wearing a shirt, and there's a very stylized 3 letters, TVA, which stands for, in Marvel parlance, the Time Variance Authority. That's basically cops for time travel, yo. You got busted doing a 1955. Pull over. So yeah, it's the police that make sure that, time flows correctly. If something is supposed to happen a certain way, they make sure that it happens a certain way. And if things somehow go afoul, it's their job to correct it or make a judgment call and let it run afoul if that's the way that they think it needs to go in that instance. Because, they're not omnipotent or anything. They've got their faults and their wants and whatnot. So, yeah, it looks like Loki's going to be doing some time traveling. The time travel police are going to catch up with them. We've got the Multiverse of Madness somewhere lurking out on the horizon. So all kinds of timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly shenanigans could be happening anytime now.
Thank you for the Doctor Who reference.
Yes.
Now, to quickly double back to Black Widow, and the ads that they put out for Black Widow are surprisingly strong. But Disney's PR department has just got to be loving the fact that here they are bringing this movie to market in the same window of time where Scarlett Johansson isn't up for 1 Academy Award. She's up for 2. She's up for Best Leading Actress for her work in Marriage Story, and then she's up for Best Actress in a Supporting Role for Jojo Rabbit, which, again, directed by Taika Waititi of Thor Ragnarok fame.
Okay, now, not to get all political or anything, but this would be the time where we would mention diversity in the list. We all love Scarlett because she's our Black Widow girl, right?
Yep.
But for crying out loud, pick one of her performances and give the second slot to another person. I mean, and we're looking for diversity and hearing about how it's all cluttered, and it's like we don't want Scarlett to be the bad guy. Because she's taken up 2 slots. And I'm sure she didn't ask for 2 slots. But for the Academy, if you're listening, which I know you're not, just pick one. Pick one of her performances and say, that's our favorite of the 2. I get that it's 2 different categories. That's okay. Pick one performance. Next slot goes to someone else.
Okay. I can see where you're coming at. But, the Academy has tried to address this problem over and over and over again and keeps screwing up. I mean, it's worth mentioning here that when they announced the directors, and, again, 5 white guys. Hey, what a surprise.
I don't know if you caught the news because it was so very recent about Joaquin Phoenix and his BAFTA acceptance speech for Joker.
Yeah, just
go ahead.
Last night. Yeah. Okay. No. He came out pretty hard out on this very same issue. And it's one of these things where the film industry is changing so fundamentally. We'll be getting into, the rise of streaming services. And in fact, it's worth pointing out that, for example, Marriage Story, the thing that Scarlett got her leading role for, was basically created for Netflix and got this award, nomination on its limited theatrical run. It's such a strange space where here's Hollywood trying to change for the Me Too era, trying to bring in diversity, and at the same time, we're coming out of a Sundance film festival where normally all of these art house films have, been bought up and got distribution deals. And, so many people went away empty-handed because it's like nobody knows what anybody wants anymore.
Right. Since we're talking about diversity, we got to be careful about them Kiwis, because between Taika Waititi and Peter Jackson, they could end up owning all the categories just between those two. So
Hugh Jackson is not a Kiwi. He's from Australia.
He's an Australian, right? Yeah. So, we're still safe from them.
Okay. Well, I bring him up because Patrick Stewart has been out this past couple of weeks or so doing press for Picard, the new sort of continuation of Star Trek, the Next Generation that just launched on CBS All Access. I think they're 2 episodes in at this point. It's very well reviewed. But Patrick, he had sort of turned his back on the Jean-Luc Picard character. Evidently, they had numerous people had come at him about, let's do another next-gen film and that sort of thing. It's like, no, Nemesis back in 2002 wasn't a particularly good film, and let's put this in a rearview mirror. But oddly enough, what got him back to the table was Logan. In fact, there's this great quote where he talked about working in 2017 with director James Mangold, and that Hugh and I were so thrilled that the last thing we did for X-Men was Logan. It was the best X-Men experience we both had because we were the same characters, but their world had been blown apart. Now, I bring this up because, again, Patrick did a lot of press out ahead of the launch of Picard, and invariably questions came up about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Patrick did admit that Kevin Feige had reached out, had approached him about coming back to play Professor X in some yet-to-be-named Marvel Cinematic Universe project. And again, when they do these press junkets, people get 10 or 15 minutes with the star, and then the next reporter comes in, and the next reporter comes in. And invariably, the actor gets asked the same question over and over and over again. What was fascinating was that Patrick's answer sort of mutated over the press event, to the effect of, well, I said no, because, again, Logan was such a wonderful end for the character and yada, yada. But toward the end of the press event, he began talking about how Picard and coming back to play Jean-Luc Picard again had kind of opened his eyes, and that, like, well, maybe I will go back and do Professor X. So I guess what I'm saying here, folks, is this is a definite maybe of a rumor. During a press event, Patrick Stewart wavered on whether or not he'll come back to play Professor X. So I guess we're going to have to keep our eye on that. And while we're talking about things that may or may not happen, this is going to be kind of depressing news for you Guardians of the Galaxy fans out there who are sort of chomping at the bit for Volume 3. But back on December 18th, James Gunn was being asked about, he's in the middle of shooting Suicide Squad. In fact, as of December 18th, they were only 2/3 of the way through shooting the film. And Gunn was talking about how Suicide Squad is the biggest practical effects film he's ever worked on. And given how involved the post-production schedule is going to be on the Suicide Squad film, the earliest he can begin shooting Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is a year from now. When I shared this story with a friend of Imagineering, it's like, yeah, they're handing out the adult diapers here, because that means that they're not going to get their ride footage for Cosmic Rewind, the big thrill ride, the Guardians of the Galaxy based thrill ride for Epcot, till very, very late in the game. given that you like to be able to do test runs on thrill rides and soft openings and that sort of thing, the fact that they may not be getting their ride media till very, very late, that's not good news. And speaking of other not good news, I guess on Instagram, James was asked, how many more Guardians films does he see himself making? He says, only one, one more. That's it.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the right answer at this time.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been fired and then brought back. I'm not going to say, I'm going to retire making these movies for the next generation.
Yeah. But this is a guy who lost his job for being on social media, what he said there. And the fact that he's so straightforward. Somebody reached out through social media and was asking about, for example, will Yondu be coming back? And it's like, nope. James said, if a character dies in my movies, they're likely stay dead. I think stakes are important.
Yeah.
And that opens a really interesting series of questions because Gamora's dead.
But we also have a different time of Gamora available to replace her with. So
this is true.
It's not a cheat. Just like we've got a Loki. Loki died at the hands of Thanos back in Infinity War, and he's currently got a series coming, and that's not a cheat either, is it? Because it's a different time Loki, So it's not bringing him back. It's just using a different version of him, which is almost why approaching Patrick Stewart to even think about coming back as Xavier isn't that crazy, because that just means that all of the Fox X-Men movies, love them or hate them, they were just in a different Marvel universe, because we've got a multiverse now, right? So they can totally be in a different pocket, just as well as the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies are just now in different universes if we choose them to be.
Speaking of which, you probably saw the same story as I did late last week about the Multiverse of Madness, that it's entirely possible we are going to see characters from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, both living and dead, but in different realities. One of the more interesting suggestions out there is that Robert Downey Jr., on the heels of how Dr. Doodle crashed and burned, maybe, pulling back on the Iron Man outfit just to, what does it feel like to be back in a hit movie? I'd really like to do that again. Oh, by the way, since we're talking about projects that have been delayed or running into issues, the Crystal Dynamics Marvel's Avengers game, which I know we've talked about a couple of times on previous podcasts, Aaron. They just revealed the game, which was supposed to come out on May 15th for PC, the PS4, Xbox One, and Google Stadia. That's now been pushed back to September 4th of this year.
Okay.
What they've said is they want to spend the additional development time focusing on fine-tuning and polishing the game to meet the high standards that our fans expect and deserve. So, I mean, I know that's got to be disappointing for the folks who were really looking forward to this game, but we pushed that off till September. I know you and I talked about this on a previous Marvelous podcast, the Stuntronics for the Avengers campus for Disney's California Adventure, and they had posted some images of the robotic figures sort of leaping through the air and doing Marvel-esque poses. And I think you were the one who was like, okay, that's Spidey, and they're going to launch him over the campus and, all that. And I always like to share these stories when Aaron is right.
If you look at it's all knees and elbows akimbo. I mean, it's pretty obvious when he's a Spider-Man, especially when he puts his hands in a thwipping position. It's a pretty dead giveaway. You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes on that one. So.
Oh, I know. but at the same time, it was so cool to see on January 30th, Disney put up a 30-second clip of the Stuntronic in the Spidey outfit and, beautifully lit from below and going through, and again, doing the thwip pose. And it was just sort of like, it's like, wow, that looks great. So again, called Friends at Imagineering to get a little info about this. And it turns out the Spidey Stuntronic in-house, it's referred to as basically the response to the dragon at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Diagon Alley at Universal Studios Florida. As it was explained to me, face it, if you've seen the dragon figure in Florida, You never quite know when it's going to go off. It typically goes off every 10 or 15 minutes, but people stand in the street and wait with their cameras and their phones to get pictures of this thing.
Jim, I got to ask, as you're describing it, I know that it shoots fire out of its mouth. Does the dragon itself move in any way, or is that totally static?
Oh no, it's a totally static thing. But on the other hand, when 10 feet of flame comes,
sure.
I mean, you can actually feel the heat. So that's a thing that people will stand there. But at the same time, people will stand there and it's like, well, I'm waiting here. I'll go get an ice cream cone or I'll get a beverage while I wait. And it's a wonderful sales opportunity. So Disney paid attention to this. So the whole notion is that in the Avengers campus, the plan is that Spidey will also be on a somewhat random routine, that he'll come launching over the bay. And the interesting thing is that it actually has created some sort of backstage challenges for the park, because normally cast members have all sorts of access to backstage areas and they can cut through, to run quickly from one side of the park to the other. And the thing is, the mechanism for the Spidey thing, I mean, this thing is I'm told it's 350 pounds. And so obviously when it's being fired back and forth, and landing in its cargo net sort of thing, cast members can't be in these spaces.
No, I can imagine the aim being off just a bit, and it's like a wrecking ball going through a side of a building, just a huge Kool-Aid Man crater. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no. Evidently, they had to do so much testing to prove to Disney Legal that this thing will hit where it's supposed to hit, and the idea is that people will sit or stand inside of the campus and wait to see Spidey go overhead to get these shots. And coincidentally,
I'm just predicting it's going to take up until it hits like one bird mid-flight, and that thing is grounded.
Okay. Well,
you know what I mean?
Here's another errant prediction. I suddenly have concerns. But from Disney's point of view, the idea is that people will go into the PIM test kitchen and get a beverage and sit there and wait for it to fly overhead. But, birds, yes, California has birds. Okay. Suddenly I'm concerned.
It's the return of the swallows of San Juan Capistrano. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, God, the humanity.
Oh, God. Okay. Wow. Okay, you have opened a can of worms here.
And they just brought more birds.
There you go. All right, speaking of Disney parks related stuff, of course, Disney parks include the cruise line, and on January 9th, Cruise Line announced the dates for 2021 for the Marvel Day at Sea packages. They're going to be doing 9 different cruises, and again, they start on January 9th, 2021, and with dates that go all the way through to March 1st, 2021. So if you're interested in that, go check that out, because what's really great about the Marvel Day at Sea thing is that because you're in international waters, remember, we've talked at length about the master licensing agreement for Universal. Once they get out into international waters, they can have all of the Marvel characters, all of the villains out on the boats. And that's the thing that's so impressed people who've done these cruises so far. It's like, oh my God, they're all here and they're all accessible, including Hawkeye, who rumors began to make the rounds that the Hawkeye limited series that had been announced for Disney Plus had been postponed. And this was supposedly largely because of Jeremy Renner's, I guess he's going through a pretty ugly divorce. And normally Disney or Marvel doesn't respond to this sort of thing. And they actually came out and made a joint statement emphatically denying this rumor, to the effect of, no, Hawkeye is going forward and this project is still associated with Jeremy Renner. We very much look forward to working with him on this limited series. And by the way, folks, when we get back, we'll talk a bit more about what's going on with these limited series, and again, largely because of the ad that just ran during the Super Bowl.
This is an ad.
I hate it!
An ad for crisp, refreshing Angry Orchard hard cider.
That is refreshing.
An ad that interrupted your podcast.
I hate being interrupted!
To remind you to stop being angry at me and crack open in Angry Orchard.
That's a good idea.
Don't get angry! Get Orchard. Angry Orchard Cider Company, LLC. AngryOrchard.com. Please drink responsibly. Angry Orchard is a hard cider with other natural flavors.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
Before we get started here, I've got a question for our listeners. How many of you are familiar with Marvel Unlimited? This is a digital, basically, archive of Marvel comic books.
It did take them a while to get the archive built because back in the day, they didn't have a lot that was digital yet. They cherry-picked a couple of critical story arcs, that were like maybe 6 to 12 books. And they digitized that, and then anything that was coming out now, they would digitize it, but you didn't have access to it for like 6 months. So they were busy trying to rebuild their library just in a digital format. So it was cherry pick older stuff, the key story arcs from older material, and anything new. And then over time, we'll fill in the gaps and we'll have our entire library available. So in the beginning, a little bit on the slim picking side. Now it's a wealth of material. And when I was living in Mobile, Alabama, there was not there were no comic book stores. So it was a great option because for the price of like 3 comic books, I could have access to everything. Now in Indianapolis, we've got comic book stores. I actually go to the one around the corner because they're cool people and you can, got to keep those guys in business. So buy it off the rack there.
No, absolutely. And more to the effect that, I love talking with and dealing with folks at the comic book stores because they will steer you. Again, I get lost in the racks, or more to the point, when I'm looking for research material for the show, they're like, okay, hang on, I got a graphic novel you got to pick up, or that sort of thing.
I want to tell you, just before we launch into it, this is a sucker thing about the comic book store. For me, back in the day, the Marvel came out with the 2099 series where it was Spider-Man 2099 and Doom 2099 and Punisher 2099. And, it's all your basic heroes just in the year 2099. That's the gag. And it flopped totally. Nobody bought it. I bought all of them. I loved all of them. I thought they were so cool. And it went away. And today you can buy like a #1 issue of all of them for like, $3. They have no monetary value whatsoever. But recently Marvel just relaunched the 2099 series, and I'm so on board. And I went and I saw it on the rack, and I'm buying all the where's more? Tell me where is more? And they're handing it to me like an addicted kid with Skittles. Just give me more. I need to taste the entire rainbow. Where's all of it?
Oh, that's so cool. Well, speaking of the entire rainbow, again, the gimmick right now is that Marvel Unlimited is doing a sale. In fact, I guess it initially was supposed to shut down tail end of January. They've since extended it through March 1st. But the gimmick is that you can get an entire year's worth of access to Marvel Unlimited for just $60. So $5 a month. And I guess the original was $9 a month or something to that effect. That's the thing. I'm just trying to at least be conversational when it comes to the Marvel comic books. And I get that, I guess, in order to help support the comic book retailer, it's that the titles, I guess there's a 6-month moratorium before the titles that are out currently then show up Marvel Unlimited. But we're just looking for some feedback as to whether or not this is a good investment. Because I'm mostly a paper guy. But Aaron, you were mentioning, I guess, one of the things that you really enjoyed when you subscribed to Marvel Unlimited is that you'd look at these things on tablets and you could literally blow up a frame or blow up a drawing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I need reading glasses, so on a tablet, if I can't see the print so well, I can, do the pinch zoom thing, and all of a sudden I can read the words. Can't do that on paper, right? So there's the benefit of that. But I also had like, you know, those times where you're sitting in the doctor's office, right, waiting for an hour for no stupid reason, and you've got the entire Marvel library there, and you just download, you know, a series of books, and you sit there and flip through them, and you don't have to worry about ruining the cover, or taking them out of the plastic, or getting fingerprints on them because they're collectibles. If you're a fan, you really want to read the stories, you know, and if you're a collector, obviously you'll have your key issues and whatnot. But this is just for take it on the go. You know, you got to go home for the holidays or whatever for a week. You got to be on the plane for 4 hours. You don't need to bring a stack of comics. You got them all with you in your Marvel Unlimited. It was great. Loved it.
Okay. I think Aaron's got me halfway there already. But again, if you folks
buy it
have any
before a
comments
plane
on-
trip. Buy 1 month before a plane trip, and you've paid for it, because you'll read it on the way to and on the way from wherever your destination is. You'll probably have read more than the $8 or $9 worth of content if you would have bought it issue by issue.
Okay. And speaking of things that would be fun to watch on a plane, the Super Bowl ad that just ran for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and Loki. But mid-September 2020 was when the 6-episode run of Falcon and the Winter Soldier was supposed to begin. Then WandaVision was supposed to kick in on New Year's Eve of 2020 and roll into 2021. And then Doctor Strange was supposed to swap release dates with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So Doctor Strange was supposed to debut February 12th, 2021, and Shang-Chi was supposed to drop May 7th, 2020. This whole schedule went sideways. The proposed schedule went sideways in early January when Scott Derrickson, who had directed the original Doctor Strange, and he'd been signed to direct the Doctor Strange sequel back in December 2018, he announced on January 9th that he would no longer be directing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And I know on the last show we talked about his December 16th tweet about release dates of the enemy of art. But the weird part of it, Aaron, is if we'd been paying attention as far back as September, Scott has sort of been rattling his saber. There's a tweet he put up on September 11th of last year where he talked about, based on my own experience in a recent conversation with 5 other tentpole directors, the most common challenge difficulty for event movie filmmakers is getting unwanted major script changes late in pre-production. He tweets that on September 11th. On October 17th, the trades announced that they've hired a brand new writer for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and it's Jade Haley Bartlett. And you have to understand that Derrickson's been working on Multiverse of Madness since December of 2018. So 10 months in, they hire a new screenwriter.
Before this goes any further, his complaint was that they're getting script changes late in pre-production. Mm-hmm. We've had mega blockbuster movies that were made up the day the cameras rolled. Iron Man 2, I think, is a pretty good example of a Marvel movie that was mostly made up the day that they rolled cameras because Robert Downey Jr. went, "No, I got this."
I do get that.
He's got to have some flexibility, right? As a director, you got to expect that the studio is going to put their fingers in the pot. You got to expect it.
And it's so interesting you bring that up because just this past week, I don't know if you saw that image that popped up online of Captain Marvel circa 2015 for Age of Ultron. Evidently, and again, I know your thoughts on the Infinity Saga Blu-ray. You know, with its 23 discs and its $550 price point and all that. But in that 24th disc with all of its cut scenes, it turns out it's Natasha and Steve Rogers, at the very tail end of the film, and it's the new Avengers. It's the new set of Avengers, and they're about to begin training them.
Right.
And you have Vision, you have Wanda, I think you have Falcons there. I forget the other characters. But evidently, Joss Whedon wrote and shot a scene where among the people who were standing there was supposed to be Captain Marvel. And it was Kevin Feige who was like, I don't think a character that's this important should be introduced in that fashion. She needs something bigger. She needs,
Right.
and more to the point, they just evidently hired a blonde woman so you could see her from the back, but the outfit would be recognizable. So
Yeah.
no, you're right. I mean, but that got as far as being shot, and it was, when they got in the editing room, it's like, nah. So yes, there has to be some sort of back and forth between producer and director and the studio and that sort of thing. But what I think the problem that Scott Derrickson is having is that, face it, the Marvel Universe has changed largely because of Disney+. August 2019, we had Kevin Feige standing, on stage at the Disney Expo and talking about these new limited series that the Marvel Studios would begin producing for the company's new subscription streaming services. And again, we have him make that comment about filmmakers being upset about unwanted script changes. But November 2019, here's Kevin Feige talking with Bloomberg about, that really, going from this point forward, if you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you're going to have to subscribe to Disney Plus if you really want to get all of the juice possible out of the theatrical releases, because there are things that are going to be introduced in WandaVision that are going to impact Multiverse of Madness, and likewise coming out of Multiverse of Madness, there are going to be elements that impact Loki. So right after this, again, we have the December tweet, from Scott Derrickson about release dates of The Enemy of Art. And then at some point, Scott Derrickson begins talking with Rian Johnson, who, let's remember, was the director of 2017's The Last Jedi. And he had initially been tapped by Lucasfilm to do a whole new trilogy of Star Wars movies, which in November of last year, he walked away from. Evidently, Ryan had the exact same issue with Disney that Derrickson did. And just that suddenly here are these limited series. And that all of the film divisions at Disney, whether it's Pixar or Lucasfilm or Marvel, are expected to help support this new effort for the company. And so it really has kind of become the tail wagging the dog. And so, so the two of them sit down and start talking about this, what it's like now to make movies at Disney, where it's like, well, make sure that the movie you're making also has some sort of tie-in with what's going on over at Disney+. And on December 25th, Scott Derrickson tweets out, "Thank you, Rian Johnson, who took time out of his vacation to talk with me at length about a personal situation I'm dealing with. An astonishingly good filmmaker, but also an incredibly gracious and incisive human being, truly grateful to him." And then 2 weeks later, he announces that he's stepping away from Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, though because he's put so much work into this film already, he's going to stay on as an executive producer. The Mandalorian was such a huge hit that it became appointment viewing. But again, that ended just before Christmas or thereabouts.
Yeah. Now,
tomorrow, the Walt Disney Company is going to have its quarterly earnings call. And this is the first quarterly earnings call since they launched Disney+. And evidently, they're going to get to announce this astounding number of subscribers. All these folks who came on board during the first 3 months of operation of the company's new subscription streaming service. But what they're not saying is that a lot of adults, after The Mandalorian ran, and after I think you were talking about how, you and Sabrina, you watched the Jeff Goldblum show on Disney Plus, and
Forky asks a question. What is computer?
Those are fun. But after that, there's not a lot on Disney Plus for adults.
Yeah. We were wondering, why are we subscribing from now until the new Marvel series starts up? What are we subscribing for? Because I don't have anything I got to check out right this minute. And I think I'm good on Disney Plus for almost a darn year until... I am very, very excited for WandaVision, I think more than anything else, because it looks radically different. the stylized TV show aesthetic from different eras, I think is very, very interesting and different from any format and formula that we've been fed thus far. So, yeah, I'm eager for long-form storytelling in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I'm eager for the fact that now that Disney is realizing, oh, Mandalorian went away and so did all of our viewers, and having monthly movies like Noel aren't going to keep people around because they had one movie that, Lady and the Tramp, I still haven't watched it, and I still don't care about it. So, if those movies are a miss for you personally, then what exactly are you paying for that month, right? I mean, that's a dangerous gamble right now. So what I'm hoping for is that they kind of get into the comic book mold of, you got to have a new issue every month, dude. You got to have a show. You got to have an episode. You got to have something every month. I don't care if it's Star Wars or MCU, but the fan base is there for it. You just got to fill those 12 long holes that are called months in the calendar.
You're not wrong. And in fact, that to bring us full circle here, this is why that ad ran during the Super Bowl, to the effect of, okay, I know you watched The Mandalorian, but this stuff is coming. The problem is it's just not coming fast enough. I mean, all three of these series are obviously in various stages of production. Likewise, Mandalorian Season 2 is being readied for, its debut in September. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of months. It's not necessarily this earnings call. I mean, Disney will get to trumpet all these people who came on board during the first 3 months. It's going to be the next earnings call where they actually have to talk about the number of people who didn't necessarily continue with Disney Plus, largely because I'm an adult. I need adult stuff.
Like Baby Yoda. Adults need more Baby Yoda in their diet.
Okay. Well, okay. As long as we're pointing toward absurdities, do you want to talk a little bit about the Morbius trailer that dropped again while we were away?
No, I do not. Thank you. Good night. Okay. So let's start off with the good. It doesn't look bad. I got to give it a fair shot. I can't just, be angry at it because it's a Sony thing. There are some shots in it that look like it is Morbius the way that it should be, right? So, I mean, there's some cool stuff there. I hope that it turns out to be a cool movie. Okay. My fear is, and I've got this great fear, that I was not happy with Venom, and that's okay. I mean, some people liked it, some people didn't. It made $1 billion at the box office, so that's fine that people support it and liked it. But if you don't, there's specific reasons for it. And specifically, when Venom and Carnage typically face off, Venom has to team up with Spider-Man, and they have this uneasy truce for just a red-hot minute so they can defeat Carnage. And then when Carnage is defeated, then Venom and Spider-Man face off against one another. And it's last man standing, right? That's the way that wrestling match should go down. And it's not going to play out that way because Sony played their cards in the wrong order. So my fear is that Marvel's been throwing a wonderful party. And Sony comes and they've got a dip that's made out of not quality ingredients. It's a little bit on the stinky side, and they're like, hey, have some of our dip. And everybody's trying the dip, and all the guests get sick, and they go home. They're like, oh, that Marvel party sucked. And it wasn't the Marvel party. It was the Sony dip that was bad at the party, right? Marvel's been a gracious host. They don't deserve any blame. So I'm really rooting if Morbius doesn't, if it doesn't turn out well, I don't want people to get sick of the MCU by association. You know what I mean? If Marvel's going to screw it up, let them screw it up.
I guess for me, what's going to be intriguing now is, I mean, face it, after this sort of negotiated Spider-Man 3 situation, and then with the understanding that they sort of go their separate ways, but with their own different franchises, the very thing you're talking about, where, will they get the chance to sort of align these classic pairings the way the fans are expecting?
No, here's the thing that I think that they've really missed out on, because they're forcing their way in. In the very first Venom movie, there's an astronaut that crashes in the opening of the movie, and it's the son of J. Jonah Jameson, and it's I think John Jameson is his name.
Yep.
So in the comic books, he becomes Man-Wolf, which is just a werewolf. You've got Morbius coming out, who's straight up Dracula. Marvel wants to bring Blade into the MCU. There's your Van Helsing. You've almost got a Universal Monsters movie waiting to happen that could be, if they lined it up right, release it on Halloween, and it's MCU Halloween Monster Fest. Werewolf versus Dracula MCU style. But see, like, they're so focused on we want to do a Sinister Six because in that trailer, they had to get Michael Keaton to come back as the Vulture. So they want to get, and it's like Morbius was never part of the Sinister Six. He just wasn't. So he shouldn't be in that team up. You know, I mean, they're kind of rushing, putting a square peg in a round hole. And I want them to succeed, but it's like everything they're showing me is they're just in a hurry to play the cards without thinking about the order and the strategy of the long game, the way that Marvel is. Marvel played it patient. How many darn movies did it take from Iron Man to the end of the Infinity Saga? 23 total, including the Spider-Man cap-off? And Sony wants a Sinister Six next week. That's the difference. It's like love, man. You gotta take your time. You gotta kiss the neck a little bit before you go thrusting with your bits.
Well, to be entirely fair here, gotta remember, Sony is also the studio that brought us Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which arguably is one of the most ambitious animated films. I mean, from a graphic point of view, from a storytelling point of view.
Sure.
So it's one of these things where I feel like you at least have to acknowledge that.
I love Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. That was Sony produced. I have no problem admitting that I enjoy that. I did not like the Andrew Garfield ones. I thought Sony decided they needed to do it their way, and they were overriding the directors that had. The reason that they hired Sam Raimi is because it was their very first go-around, and Sam was a fan of Spider-Man. He told them that when he was 6 years old, he had a painting of Spider-Man over his bed, and he read all the comics, and they went, "That's our guy." And then it made money, and they went, "Ooh, money, money, money." And then they found out about the Sinister Six, and they went, "Okay, wait, guys, let's do it. Let's just relaunch the whole thing, and we'll get it going together real quick." And then it failed, and now the MCU's up and going. They're like, "Ooh, money train, let's hop on it." And we got that Sinister Six that we failed at the first couple of times. Let's try it again. And it's like, guys, kiss the neck, nibble on the ear, slow the hell down.
Okay, so we're back to the PG-13 section of the show, folks. So before Dr. Ruth comes on as our special guest, I think we better head for the door here. So I tell you what, folks, if you like what you've listened to here today,
and if you really like it.
Yes. Thank you for totally undermining my efforts here. Okay, so do Aaron and I a favor. If you could head over to iTunes and rate and recommend our show, that would be very helpful. Likewise, if you would consider subscribing over at Bandcamp, that would be equally helpful. We've got a bunch of other podcasts here at Jim Hill Media. We've got the Mothership Disney Dish with Len Testa. Likewise, Universal Joint with Dustin Fuse. Looking at Lucasfilm with Dan Z. I Want That with Rochelle Valladolid. And Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. By the way, Nancy wants me to remind you folks that you can find us on Twitter and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. And okay, now I got to go back and look at the Morbius ad, and it's better than I remember, right? Okay,
one last thing that we have to leave is the question mark at the end. Morbius is walking in an alley next to a Spider-Man poster, and they've spray painted murderer over it, which is to lead us to believe that's in reference to Mysterio at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yes.
However, the Spider-Man in that image is from the Sony PlayStation game, which is using the Tobey Maguire costume. So, what does that mean? If that poster is using the Tobey Maguire costume in their universe, I don't even know what that would indicate. Who made that call? What are they trying to say to us as fans? Huh? Is it not going to be Tom Holland? Are we getting Tobey Maguire back at the age of 45 to get back in the Spanda? What does that mean? And then we'll put the question mark dot. Good night, folks.
That works for me. Okay. Take care, folks, and hopefully we'll have an answer to that by the next show.